Hello, everyone. Good morning. I am coming to you live from the Aquarium of the Pacific on November 26th at 10 a.m. My name is Tiffany. I'm an educator here at the Aquarium of the Pacific. And no, I am not actually swimming in this tropical habitat right now, but rather I am in the studio with a green screen. So I'm in the studio today with my friend Talia, and she is going to be the one that is controlling everything that you see going on behind me. But she's also going to help me by telling me what you have to say. You can interact with us while this is playing live by texting in any observations or questions that you have to 562-286-1838. So again, if you are watching this live, November 26th at 10 a.m. to about 10:30, you can text us live with any of your questions or observations. If you are watching the recording of this episode, we still would like to hear from you. You can instead email us at live@lbaop.org. Again, any observations or questions that you may have, you can send to that email if you are watching this after the fact. All right, today's topic are sharks and conservation. So I'll talk a little bit about, well, what even is a shark? But then I'll kind of go more into the challenges that sharks face, some critically endangered sharks, and then the conservation. What are scientists doing to help conserve sharks, and what can you and I do day to day to help sharks as well? So right now we are looking at our tropical exhibit. So this is going to be warm water. All of these fish and sharks, rays, you might see a turtle. They are all warm water animals, but we have sharks all over the world in all of our oceans. So we have sharks that even live in cold waters as well. But looking at this habitat here, try to point out and find for yourself the sharks. And how can you tell the sharks apart from the other fish? How do you see an animal and know, yes, that one is a shark? How do you know? So take a couple of moments to make those observations for yourself of what makes a shark. Because I see some fish swimming by, lots and lots of fish, but that's a shark right there. That one is a shark. How do I know that's a shark and not just another type of fish? So there's that shark again. Oh, we have this little shark that just went by there. How do I know that's a shark and not some other kind of fish? If you have any observations that you would like to share, go ahead and text us live at 562-286-1838. Ooh, there's that turtle that I was talking about over there. So, a little bit about the difference between our other fish and our sharks. Our sharks are, in fact, a type of fish, but they are a cartilaginous fish. So all of these fish that we see here, they have a skeleton kind of like ours. So we have hard bones inside of our body, underneath our skin and our muscles, and same thing with all of these bony fish. But our sharks, and I think we just saw a ray go by, our sharks and that ray are, here's one of our rays, are known as cartilaginous fish. So they still have a skeleton, but their skeleton is made out of cartilage. Now, even though we have hard bones for our skeleton, we do actually still have some cartilage on our body. Do you know where? If you are watching this at home right now or maybe in class, go ahead and point on your body. Where do we have cartilage? There are a couple of places. So the tip of our nose and our ears. Look, I can bend my ear all the way in half because it is made out of cartilage. So cartilage is very soft and flexible. So as we see these sharks swimming by, you can see that they have a lot more movement than some of our bony fish. And that is because their skeleton is made out of cartilage. They're able to turn really fast and kind of fold their bodies in different ways that these bony fish just aren't able to do because they have a hard skeleton like us. So that is one difference, but not something that you can really see on the outside for the most part. So some other things that you might be able to notice, if you were able to see a shark up close, you might notice that instead of having one gill plate, because right, all fish have gills. So for us to breathe, we have lungs, and our lungs take oxygen out of the air. But fish and our sharks have to have fresh water flow in through their mouth and out through their gills. Now we can't see their gills, but this fish right here, we can see this kind of crescent shape here. That is its gill plate, its little gill cover covering its gills. And so then the water would go in through its mouth and out this way. But when we look at a shark, they don't have just that one cover. We see that they have, for the most part, 5 gill slits. Now, most of the shark species out there have those 5 gill slits. There are some sharks that have 6, known as a 6-gilled shark. We do have some that have 7, known as a 7-gilled shark. But majority of sharks are going to have just those 5 gill slits. So water comes in through their mouth and over their gills and out those gill slits there. So that's something that they have in common with other fish, that they do have gills, but just the way that we see them on their body looks a little bit different. Now that we are looking at this beautiful picture of a white shark, their teeth. So sharks, because we have so many different species of shark, and these different species of shark live all over our oceans, they're also all eating different stuff. So their teeth are one thing that tell us what they eat. So in the case of this white shark, they have large triangular teeth with bumps on the edge. We call that serrated. That is so that they can take a bite out of something, shake their head to cut the meat off. But some of our other friends, we saw some zebra sharks in our tropical exhibit. They have teeny tiny teeth that they actually use to crunch up the shells of invertebrates. So here is that zebra shark again. Its mouth is down here and it's on the bottom because it's going to hang out mostly on the ocean floor to find those little shelled invertebrates. Maybe little crabs, maybe little clams, maybe little scallops. And here's a nice view of that mouth again. And you can actually see the water pumping out of those gill slits there. Very cool. So those are some things that we know that makes a shark a shark. But one of the most, I guess I'll say, famous things of how we can identify a shark are actually their fins. So we tend to think of their dorsal fin, that triangle here at the top, to be something that is distinctly shark-like. Now, of course, we do have other animals in the ocean that have dorsal fins. Think about dolphins, whales. They have dorsal fins as well, but this is something that helps us to identify that this is a shark and not just some other fish. We have the pectoral fins here, and we have this back fin here as well, known as the caudal fin. And if you watch the shark as it is swimming around, you notice that they move kind of side to side, and really it's this back fin here, this caudal fin, that is propelling them forward. They aren't using these pectoral fins and like flapping them, and that is how they are moving around, but rather they are using those pectoral fins to steer and guide them, and sometimes to make a quick turn. But it's this back fin that is really helping them propel forward. But this top dorsal fin is also really important, because if you look at the shape of this shark, well, how would you describe the shape? So looking at just the body, kind of ignoring the fins for now, how would you describe the shape of this shark? If you like, you can text in your answers. So looking at it, it's kind of shaped like this. We kind of got fat middle, and then it's tapered off at the front, fat middle, tapered down to the fin as well. I would describe that as football shaped. Now, what happens when you throw a football? Correctly, at least. If you throw a football correctly, it spirals, it spins as it is flowing through the air. Would that be very beneficial for this shark to be trying to swim through the water and spinning? No, of course not. So this dorsal fin helps to maintain balance. And in general, when you are looking at an ocean animal, the larger the dorsal fin, the faster that that animal moves. So I know this is a shark episode, but think about the dorsal fin on, say, like an orca. Super, super tall dorsal fins. That's to keep that animal balanced as it's swimming really, really fast through the water. So those are just a couple of things that while we are looking at these habitats that also contain bony fish, how do we tell the difference between the fish and the sharks? So right now we are looking at Shark Lagoon. Now this is a live cam. So 24 hours a day we are streaming footage from these habitats that we have here at the aquarium, and you can watch them at any time. But we can see that we have some sharks in here, some sharks over there, but then we also have these bony fish. And now that we know a little bit more about what makes a shark, now we realize, oh, that's why I can pinpoint which animals are sharks and which ones are just fish. And actually we have a turtle in here too, if you see that turtle over there. All right, so we learned what makes a shark, but now I'm going to ask you, why are sharks important? Okay, do you have any thoughts or any guesses as to why sharks would be important? Why should we care about sharks? Go ahead and text in your answers to 562-286-1838. Why are sharks important? What do they serve? What purpose do they serve in our oceans? So a question that we get asked a lot, particularly when looking at Shark Lagoon, why don't the sharks eat these other fish that they are sharing an exhibit with? Now, that is because we feed our sharks regularly and offer them food regularly. So if you had a really full tummy, are you going to start raiding through the pantry? Or are you going to call up to order some pizza if you're full? Probably not. So these sharks, they're already full, so they don't feel the need to chase down any of their friends in this exhibit. But sharks that are in their natural habitat out in the ocean, they do have to chase down their food. So they're chasing down a school of fish. Out of that school, which fish are they most likely to get? If you're chasing a large group of maybe your friends, which one are you most likely to tag first? Probably the one that's the slowest, the one that's in the back of the group. So these sharks are usually eating the fish that are sick, maybe older fish as well. So that helps the fish population from spreading disease. So if there's a lot of sick fish in this school of fish, it can quickly spread throughout the other fish. But then the sharks are there and they eat the sick or dying fish that help to prevent the spread of whatever that disease is, whatever that bacteria or virus is amongst those other fish. So they help to keep the fish populations healthy. But they also help to keep the fish populations at a manageable size. So sharks are known as an apex predator, meaning they are at the very top of the food chain in the oceans. So anytime you completely lose an apex predator from a habitat, you start to see the rest of the ecosystem get out of balance. Because then what happens is what is normally their food starts growing at an exponential rate. That population starts to boom. But as that population starts to boom, that puts a hindrance onto whatever is below them in the food chain. So let's say that these sharks are eating fish, and those fish eat algae, or those fish eat corals, whatever it is. If we then kind of take sharks out of that habitat, those fish, population numbers grow and grow and grow, and then what do they eat? They eat all of the algae. But then what happens when they eat all of it and there's none left? That is going to be a big problem for that ecosystem, and then potentially that entire habitat could collapse because of a food scarcity for this larger population of fish. So we should care about sharks, and sharks are important because they are the apex predators. They are important to keep the other fish populations healthy and in balance. Now let's talk about some of the challenges to sharks. What do you think are some of the biggest threats to shark populations right now? So I mentioned that we do have sharks all over the world, right? Sharks all over the world. So we have sharks like the ones we have here in Shark Lagoon that live in warm waters, but we also have sharks that live in cold waters. So sharks all over the world. What do you think are threats to these sharks? Now remember, you can text in any of your thoughts, ideas, and observations to 562-286-1838. So, big threats right now to sharks. Think about if they are at the top of the food chain, if there's any other disturbances within that food web, that can impact the sharks. So one big impact to sharks right now is unsustainable fishing practices. Now, what does that mean? Yeah, someone just texted in, overfishing. Perfect. Yes, exactly. So fishermen trying to feed us, people that are purchasing the fish, go out and they take too much of a particular species out of the ocean. That hurts the overall ecosystem. The sharks have less food to eat, but then also that particular fish population, if too much of it is taken out of the ocean, that particular species has problems trying to recoup their numbers. They still need to have a good amount of reproducing adults to have future babies. So that is one big thing that impacts sharks. But in addition to maybe taking too much of a bony fish species out of the water, some unsustainable fishing practices are actually the sharks themselves accidentally getting caught. So if we throw out a big net and we're trying to catch all of these, maybe tuna, whatever it is, sharks could potentially run into the net, get tangled up, and if they aren't able to constantly keep swimming, they don't have that water flowing over their gills, and they will actually suffocate. Even though they are still in the water, they can't have water flowing over their gills, and they will suffocate by being trapped in a net. That is called bycatch. When a fisherman puts out a net and then catches other things by accident, that is called bycatch. So unsustainable fishing practices might be taking too much fish out of the ocean or accidentally catching sharks. That is a big threat to sharks. Now, I do have a text in from Colin, and he is saying that a threat to sharks could be climate change. Yes, that definitely could be a big impact to sharks, because as we are warming the earth, as the earth is warming up in general, something that's happening is coral reefs are dying. The ocean is becoming too warm for corals to live. And coral reefs, this is actually, we see coral here. Coral reefs are actually one of the habitats for sharks that live in warmer waters. So let's talk a little bit more about those coral reefs. What is a coral reef? I mean, we're looking at these corals here. They kind of look like a rock, but actually they are a living animal. and they are an animal that is related to anemones. So have you ever gone to the aquarium before and been able to touch a little anemone and it kind of feels a little sticky? So corals, coral polyps, are related to anemones. But they are an animal, and they kind of secrete a hard calcium around them. But then they have a plant that lives inside of them. They have an algae called zooxanthellae that lives inside of the coral, and that's actually what gives the coral their beautiful colors. But they can catch their own food, but the zooxanthellae really helps them by doing photosynthesis and then giving food in the form of sugar to that coral polyp. But if the ocean gets warmer, so here we have a nice zoomed in picture, and we can see these are all individual coral polyps. And you can see how they kind of look like little anemones. Here you see this green, these kind of dots, maybe they're a little bit brown depending on kind of how you're seeing them through your TV or through your computer screen. That is the zooxanthellae. So you can see that there's a lot of algae growing inside of these corals. But if the ocean gets too warm, the zooxanthellae leaves the coral. And then you see that the coral is all white. It completely loses its color. We call that coral bleaching. Now, there is an opportunity, a small window of time, that the zooxanthellae can come back to the coral, and the coral can still make it. But if the zooxanthellae leaves for too long, that coral doesn't have any food, and the coral will starve and die. So climate change is a threat to sharks because it is a threat to their habitat, coral reefs. Without the coral reefs, the other fish and other animals aren't going to be able to live in that habitat, and therefore the sharks at the very top of the food chain will also be impacted because now their food source is gone and their home as well. So yeah, great observation, Colin. Climate change definitely impacts sharks as well. Also, while we have runoff and pollution going to the oceans and ice caps melting, that is changing the pH of the water as well. And what we'll see over time is that the ocean will become more acidic. Now, I don't know if you've ever done this experiment at home, but try taking maybe a piece of chalk or maybe even a seashell that you find at the beach and pour vinegar on it. So vinegar is acidic, very, very mild acidity, but it will dissolve that seashell. There are a lot of animals that rely on their shell in the ocean, and some of these animals, like that zebra shark I said, like to eat those shelled animals. The water's too acidic, those animals won't have a shell. They will literally dissolve. So that is also something that can, in the future, potentially impact sharks. But right now, they're being impacted by that habitat loss, losing those coral reefs, unsustainable fishing, but then also sharks have a very slow reproduction rate. They have to grow up and be much older than other fish to be able to reproduce. And then they only produce a couple of pups, versus other bony fish might lay hundreds of eggs and potentially hundreds of new baby fish could be born. That's not the case with sharks. They have to be a little bit older and might only lay a couple of viable eggs. And here is a picture of a shark egg, sometimes known as a mermaid's purse. Now, not all sharks lay eggs. Some of them do have live birth, or some of them keep the eggs on the inside of them, and then the sharks will hatch on the inside of the mom and then leave. And we can see here a perfect little outline of this little baby shark. But all of these little fibers here will kind of get stuck to rocks and corals, and then the rest of the egg kind of looks like seaweed, right? So then it's going to blend in with the rest of the habitat, and then hopefully that little shark can hatch from its little egg while being hidden in its habitat. But slow reproduction is something that is impacting sharks. If we aren't allowing enough sharks to get to those older ages where they can have babies, then we can't replenish the population of sharks. Now, I do want to talk about one shark species that is critically endangered, and that is the rhino ray. So some of us may have never heard of the rhino ray. They do look like a cross between, there we go. They do look like a cross between a shark and a ray. Sharks and rays are in the same family. You can see that it has a spherical, just like rays and just like the zebra shark that we saw earlier. And it does kind of have more of that shark body. We see all of those fins. And then its mouth is going to be right there on the bottom, just like a ray. And we do have a picture. Yep, and you can see its mouth right there on the bottom, just like a ray. And this mouth is going to be filled with teeny tiny teeth that it uses to crunch up shells. So it is going to be eating those small invertebrates on the bottom of the sea floor. But what could you or I do to try and help and protect this critically endangered animal? Well, before today, have you ever heard of a rhino ray? Probably not. So one of the very basic things that you can do is talk to your friends and family about the rhino ray. One of the things we can do, one of the big things we could do is just spread awareness about the issues that are impacting sharks and rays. So that's one thing that you could do. Just spread the awareness. Tell people about what you have learned today. Okay, moving forward, let's talk about conservation. So shark numbers are going down across almost all different species of sharks. But what can we do? Let's talk first about what are scientists doing for the sharks. So one thing that we are doing here at the aquarium, I mentioned that slow reproduction is one of the challenges that sharks are facing, and we have a couple of shark reproduction programs that we have going on by artificially inseminating some sharks, but then also just starting to learn the different hormones or other impacts to reproduction that these sharks are having, because each shark is a completely different species, and therefore each shark kind of has a different mechanism for reproduction. They aren't all the same. They aren't all just laying eggs or giving live birth. They're all doing different things. So learning more and researching what is impacting these sharks and how we can help, that is something that we are doing here at the aquarium. Here's an adorable picture. So this is what a zebra shark looks like when it is a baby, and you can see that it does have stripes when it is a baby, and that is how it got its name of zebra shark. But we do artificially inseminate the zebra sharks here, and these are some of the babies from that project. Now, scientists are also using global fin print. So what global fin print is, the goal is to kind of have cameras with some sort of attractant all over our oceans. So we have a little video for you here. So there's a camera, and then there's something here that is attracting the sharks, and we just have hours upon hours upon hours of footage, and the goal is to just see, well, how many sharks do we see swim by, so that we can get a good estimate of what shark populations are like out in our oceans all over the world, and then that can better inform us to help these local governments and these local nations what they can do to help these sharks. Now, one of the things that some people are doing is having marine protected areas. So, and you can see this ray is really attracted to that. So marine protected areas, we do have one here locally in Southern California, and that's over by Catalina. But these marine protected areas say not just this particular species of shark is protected, but this whole bubble, this whole habitat is protected. So all of the fish and all of the sharks and all of the maybe sea turtles, the plants in the area, everything here is protected. You can't fish in here. Maybe there are restrictions on even scuba diving in the area. And this is our blue cavern habitat that we have here at the aquarium. And it is actually modeled off of a dive site in Catalina. And Catalina is where we have one of our marine protected areas. So it's really nice because the kelp, the fish, everything is protected in that area, regardless if they are endangered or not. So having marine protected areas really helps conserve the shark populations that call that area home, because their food is protected, but they are protected as well. Now, what is something that you can do to help in the conservation effort of sharks? Because we learned today that sharks are really cool animals. How can you protect them? How can I protect them? What do you think? Go ahead and text in some of your ideas on how you can protect sharks. One of the ways that comes to mind immediately is trying to solve that unsustainable fishing problem. That's a really big threat to sharks. So how can you help in that? Make sure that when you are eating seafood, that you are eating seafood that has been sustainably caught. How do I know if it's been sustainably caught? If you're buying it from the grocery store, should have some sort of sticker label on there telling you if it has been sustainable or not. If you are unsure, go ahead and ask someone that works in the store. If you're going to a restaurant, you can look up online ahead of time before visiting the restaurant if the seafood that they are serving has been sustainably caught, or ask your server while at the restaurant, and they should be able to help you out as well. So today we have learned what makes a shark, the challenges and threats that sharks are currently facing. We learned about the rhino ray, which is critically endangered, and we learned about some conservation efforts that scientists are having, but some conservation efforts that you and I can be involved in as well. All right, that is it for our time today. Until next time, have a great weekend. We'll see you again soon. Bye.